There is a type of silence that weighs heavily, a silence that echoes deeply in the mind of those who were expecting words, explanations, efforts. This silence, she cannot tolerate it. Not because it would be cruel, but because it confronts her with something she no longer controls. Your complete absence. She was expecting a sign, a response, a new attempt from you. She thought she could still feel that she had access to you, that you were still there, that she could still provoke a reaction in you. But what she got was something entirely different. She got nothingness. And this nothingness begins to make a huge noise in her head, because when you choose silence out of dignity, the other person's mind can no longer find peace. Welcome to Relationship Psychology. This video is dedicated to you who are resisting the urge to write, to you who feel that tension in your chest from staying silent. Because what you experience as firm restraint, she perceives as a real loss. While you hold strong, she starts asking herself 1,000 questions. While you maintain this silence, she remembers everything. And while you remain solid, she begins to measure the true weight of your absence. Your silence isn't trying to punish her. It simply forces her to face the truth. You are no longer emotionally available. You no longer react. You no longer chase. You no longer move out of fear of losing her. And when a woman realizes she has lost emotional control over a man of value, a deep imbalance sets in within her. This is the exact moment when the real transformation begins. While she agitated internally, you are building something far greater than a simple response. You reclaim your power without a word, without explanation, without justification, simply by choosing yourself in silence. And this act, even if it goes unnoticed by others, remains one of the most powerful a man can perform. Before continuing, leave a like on this video if one day it was harder for you to stay silent than to speak, but you still chose silence. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss anything, and leave in the comments just one word: silence. Not as absence, not as punishment, but as the precise space where she begins to feel what you are reclaiming, the control and the value you have always carried within you, what she never expected. She wasn't prepared for this. She wasn't ready to know nothing more about you, to have no sign, to receive no message, to no longer be able to check if you still think about her, if you still suffer, if you are still there waiting. Because even if she didn't admit it, she was counting on your reaction, she was counting on your message, she was counting on the fact that sooner or later you would crack. And when that doesn't happen, something begins to crack within her. Not dramatically, but slowly, deeply. She starts revisiting old conversations, rereading exchanges, remembering the moments when she felt safe with you. Because silence offers her no answer, it only sends back memories. And memories, when they arise without control, weigh far more than any conversation. While you struggle not to write, she struggles to understand what's happening. Why aren't you there anymore? Why don't you insist? Why don't you demand anything? Why don't you try to fix things? And this total lack of reaction is what worries her most, because it destroys the image she had of you. The image of the man who was always available, always ready, always present. That image collapses, and she doesn't know what to replace it with. This is where something crucial happens for your self-esteem. Your silence forces her to see you in a new light, no longer as the man taken for granted, but as the man who left without a sound. And that doesn't bring relief. It creates doubt. Insecurity, a constant question she can't turn off. What if I've really lost him? Meanwhile, you're going through the hardest phase, the endless nights, the impulses, the desire to say something just to ease the anxiety. But every time you resist writing, something strengthens within you too. You become more solid, more grounded, more aware that you don't need to react to exist. And this silent growth is exactly what she doesn't see, but begins to sense. Understand this clearly. She doesn't suffer because you're ignoring her. She suffers because she can no longer reach you emotionally, because access is closed, because control is lost, because the man she thought was always available no longer is. And this void can't be filled with distractions or pride. It stays there, stirring things she thought were settled. This is the moment when many men break the silence and lose all the power they had started to reclaim. But not you. You persevere. You hold strong. You stay firm because even if it hurts today, every day you maintain silence, you become someone greater than your impulses. And while she tries to decipher your silence, you learn something far more valuable. Not reacting is also a way of saying, I respect myself. When silence becomes an emotional weight for her, there comes a precise moment when silence stops being merely an absence and turns into a real burden for her. It doesn't happen on the first day or the second. It happens when time passes and you continue not to reappear, when waiting can no longer be justified by pride. When the mind starts filling the voids you left behind, that's when she truly begins to feel uncomfortable. Because prolonged silence leaves no room for reassuring fantasies. It doesn't let her think you're just busy. It doesn't allow her to believe you'll write tomorrow. It doesn't give her the option to rely on the idea that you remain available. Your constant silence conveys something very hard for her to accept. You are no longer orbiting around her. This is essential for your ego. While you hold back, she begins to lose her internal balance. She wonders what you're doing with your life, if you're better off, if you're more at peace, if the absence has hurt you less than she imagined. And these questions aren't neutral. They're corrosive, because the more she tries to answer them, the more your image grows in her mind. Silence has an effect that words can't match. You can't dialogue with it. You can't manipulate it. You can't easily reinterpret it. She can justify an argument, downplay a message, twist a conversation, but she can do nothing against the void you've created. This void isn't explained, it is felt. And while she feels this growing discomfort, you are going through something else. You confront yourself, your impulses, your need for immediate relief. Because writing would be easy, breaking the sea. Silence would offer temporary relief, but not writing is a daily victory. Small, silent, but real. Every day you hold firm in silence, you send a message that needs no recipient. You no longer react from hurt. You no longer seek to soothe fear. You no longer need to prove anything. And this inner change is exactly what she begins to notice, even if she can't name it. Something has changed. Something has slipped away from her. Your ego truly begins to rise because you understand a fundamental truth. Not writing doesn't diminish you, it restores you. You learn to tolerate the void without filling it with words, to endure discomfort without fleeing. And this self-mastery is one of the greatest forms of masculine power. She experiences silence as a loss. You experience it as a profound transformation. And between these two realities, without anyone noticing yet, the balance begins to tip in your favor. When she realizes it's a firm decision, one day comes when she stops believing it's temporary. She can no longer convince herself that you'll write tomorrow, that you're just angry, that you need time. The moment arrives when she grasps that your silence isn't a pause. It's a definitive decision. And this realization hits her far harder than any past argument. This is when something emerges that she hadn't anticipated. The fear of having made an irreversible mistake. Because an argument can be repaired, a message gets a response, an argument can be negotiated. But firm, prolonged silence, without reproach or attempt, can't be managed easily. It tells her that the man she had in front of her is no longer willing to react as before, and that leaves her without tools. This is the exact moment when she begins to look back with different eyes. She no longer remembers only the conflicts. She recalls how you were when you were calm, when you brought stability, when you were present without demanding anything in return. And this memory hurts because it now comes with a question that gives her no peace. Why didn't I value him when he was there? Meanwhile, you continue in silence, not out of indifference, but because you've understood something new. Speaking from hurt only made you smaller. Staying silent from dignity makes you greater. And even if no one tells you, you begin to feel it in your body. You feel more solid, less reactive, more in control of yourself. She begins to experience silence as an uncomfortable mirror, because it reflects her own choices, her past coldness, her certainty that you would always be there. And now, you're not. Not to demand, not to punish. Simply, you're not there. And this clean absence, without drama, is what weighs the most. Your ego begins to reach its highest point because you realize you're not losing control. You're reclaiming it. You prove first to yourself that you can stay firm without explanation, that you can ride out the impulse without giving in, that you can respect yourself even when it hurts. She perceives silence as abandonment. You experience it as an act of self-respect. And this difference, though invisible for now, is changing everything from within. The internal battle, overcoming the urge to write. This is where the battle becomes internal for you, not with her, but with yourself. Because maintaining silence isn't easy. There are days when the body demands to write, not out of pure love, but to relieve tension, to calm anxiety, to untie that knot in the chest. And that's precisely where many men fall and where you grow stronger. While you breathe deeply and choose not to write, she begins to experience the opposite, a constant worry. Her mind finds no rest. She wonders if you no longer care, if she's lost you for good, if there's someone else, if you've moved on without her. And each of these questions weighs more than any message you could have sent because unanswered questions can't be controlled. Understand this clearly. Your silence offers her no emotional respite. It pulls the ground from under her feet. It takes away her certainty that she could come back whenever she wanted. It removes the security that she still held a place with you. And when a woman loses that security, something emerges that she hadn't expected. Vulnerability. Not toward you, but toward the reality of having lost you. This is where your ego must rise, not fall. Because what you're doing first for yourself. You're training your inner mastery. You prove that you can endure the void without filling it with words, that you can tolerate discomfort without betraying yourself. And this inner muscle distinguishes men who break from those who evolve. She, meanwhile, begins to remember not only what you were, but how you made her feel. The calm, the stability, the feeling of having someone solid by her side. And now that it's gone, she feels it in her body, in the silence of her evenings, in the long nights, in the moments when she waits for something that never comes. Your absence becomes a constant presence in her mind, and you continue in silence, gaining something no one can take away: self-respect. Every day you don't write, you choose yourself. Every impulse you master strengthens you. Every night you get through without yielding transforms you into a stronger version of yourself. Not because she sees it yet, but because you feel it deeply. Maintaining silence takes nothing from you. It gives back everything you had placed outside yourself. She experiences silence as punishment. You experience it as growth, and even if it seems invisible today, this is the exact point where power shifts, sides, and stays with you. When silence becomes your new position of strength, something begins to happen when your silence lasts over time and is no longer effort, but deep conviction. You stop counting the days, you stop measuring impulses. Silence stops being a struggle and becomes your natural stance. And this change, even if no one tells you, is felt with powerful intensity. She, meanwhile, begins to experience silence differently. No longer as passing anger, no longer as a game. She perceives it as an uncomfortable reality she can no longer avoid. Because she understands something she hadn't anticipated. You're not punishing her. You're choosing yourself. And that deprives her of the central role she thought she held in your life. Your ego truly rises here because you realize you no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to win arguments that don't exist. You no longer need to close anything with words. You close with actions, with consistency, with self-mastery. And that gives you back a very strong feeling. Inner authority. While you settle into this place, she begins to feel silence as a constant reminder of what she's lost. Not just you as a man, but the version of herself that felt safe with you. Because your presence brought something that's no longer there today. And when that disappears without drama, without reproach, without attempt, it leaves a void hard to fill. This is when many women try to convince themselves they're fine. They distract themselves, keep busy, repeat that it's over, but silence remains there. Not as a threat, but as a real absence. And this absence weighs more at night, in quiet moments when nothing covers it. That's when your name appears without warning. You are no longer in that place. You're elsewhere, higher, more stable, more grounded. You no longer need to know if she's suffering to move forward. But the truth is this: your silence accomplishes more than 1,000 messages ever could, because it doesn't beg, doesn't insist, doesn't lower itself. It simply marks a clear before and after. Here, something definitive happens within you. You begin to feel pride, not arrogance, a calm pride. The pride of knowing you're doing what's right, even if it hurts. The pride of not betraying yourself for temporary relief. The pride of holding firm when you once would have given in. She experiences silence as loss of control. You experience it as reclaiming identity. And when a man reclaims his identity, there's no going back. Because he no longer stays silent out of fear. He stays silent because he knows who he is. The definitive turning point. The point of no return. This is where something happens that she never expected at all. She stops seeing you as the man she could get back whenever she wanted. And this shift in her perception deeply unsettles her. Because one thing is walking away believing the other will stay there, and another is realizing there's no longer any guarantee of return. At this stage, her mind turns against her. She wonders if she underestimated you, if she was wrong to think you'd always be available, if she mistook your patience for weakness. And these questions aren't gentle. They're painful because they come when there's no way left to check anything. Your silence neither confirms nor denies anything. It simply remains while she torments herself inside. You enter a completely different phase. You no longer survive silence. You inhabit it. You wake up with it. You live your life. You breathe differently. Not because everything is resolved, but because something in you has stabilized. You've stopped reacting. You've stopped begging for relief. And that makes you feel more like a man than ever. She begins to feel she's lost something she doesn't know how to replace. It's not just the relationship, it's the feeling of having a solid, present, consistent man. And when that feeling fades without noise, without reproach, without drama, it becomes deeply troubling because she can't blame you, can't argue with you, can't reproach you for anything. She can only feel the absence. Your masculine ego must rise strongly here because you understand you're not punishing anyone. You're setting a definitive boundary. Without saying 100 words, you declare that you no longer accept a dynamic where you give more than you receive. And this message, though unspoken, is felt with absolute clarity. She perceives silence as a door that closed softly, but that she no longer knows how to reopen. You experience it as the moment you stopped knocking on foreign doors and started building yourself from within. It's a point of no return because the man who gets here no longer breaks silence out of anxiety, no longer writes out of impulse, no longer betrays himself out of fear, and that forever changes how you're perceived, and more importantly, how you perceive yourself. She begins to understand she's truly lost you. You begin to understand you never lost yourself. And this silent but powerful difference is what tips the balance definitively in your favor. Everything concludes here, not with noise, not with grandiose words. It concludes with a solid truth you no longer need to explain. The silence she couldn't bear wasn't a strategy. It was a natural consequence of you stopping chasing, stopping reacting, deciding no longer to lose yourself for anyone. She may still feel that void. She may still wonder at what moment something so precious slipped through her fingers. She may recognize in her quietest moments that she underestimated a man who was truly there. But listen closely. You no longer need her to understand it because you have understood everything. Today, you know silence took nothing from you. It gave you back your center, your calm, your dignity. You learned to hold firm when no one was watching, to master impulse without betraying yourself, to not write even when it hurt. And this inner training transformed you into a different man, stronger, more centered, more aware of your own value. She may not have borne your silence, but you learned to fully inhabit it. And that's the difference that changes everything, because the man who learns to be at peace in silence no longer begs for attention, no longer negotiates his self-worth, no longer chases validation. He moves forward with a calm firmness that is felt without a word, and that firmness never fades. Keep this conclusion deeply etched in you because it sums up the entire journey. She lost something precious, but you gained the most important thing, yourself. Before ending, make this final gesture for yourself, not for others. Leave a like if today you understand that staying silent was the most powerful act you've ever done. Subscribe and turn on the bell. Because here, we don't teach you to react. We teach you to hold firm as a man. And leave in the comments just one word, silence. Not as absence, not as punishment, but as proof that when everything pushed you to write, you chose to respect yourself. Continue with serenity, with calm pride, because the man who reclaims himself in silence never loses himself again.